Hello, bigenderdotnet viewers. Brin here. So this video is going to be on a different topic, but something happened this week which I think we need to talk about in our videos this week. The WPATH, which is the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, released their 7th update to the standards of care, which gives guidance to doctors, therapists, pharmacists, basically, anybody who would be involved in the care of transgender individuals. They're pretty profound, the changes that have happened this year. So, I think I wanted to talk about that. So I think the question I put on the group was that, what do you think about the changes and how do you think they'll impact you? But before I do that, I wanted to say that I think all of my channel mates are, my collab channel mates, are trying to kill me with all of the embarrassment. So I received a lot of really lovely compliments last week from all of you about me in a wedding dress, which gave me all kinds of blushes and are very appreciated. So thank you. And I have to say too, it's after 1 a.m. and I'm trying to get this video up so that I can be on time 2 weeks in a row. And I look a mess because I've been doing all kinds of things all day long, and it's been a long weekend. But so that said, the relevant changes in the standards of care, and I've not been through the whole document yet, but most profound is that it changes the very model of the standards of care toward a much more informed consent type of model. So it used to be that you had to have X months of psychotherapy before you could get a letter to take to a physician to get a referral to an endocrinologist so you could get your hormones prescribed. And you had to commit to spending X amount of time in a real-life experience, originally called the real-life test, but in later years called the real-life experience, in order to progress in your transition. Well, they've done away with those kinds of gatekeeping requirements. So most relevant to us as bigender people is something on page 9, and I'm going to read it, so please forgive me, but I will put a link down in the show notes to the actual WPATH document, the link to the news article that we were using off of this. So the relevant blurb is on page 9 of the doc. It says, as a generation of transsexual, transgender, and gender nonconforming individuals has come of age, many of whom have benefited from different therapeutic approaches, they have become more visible as a community and demonstrated considerable diversity in their gender identities, roles, and expressions. Some individuals describe themselves not as gender nonconforming, but as unambiguously cross-sexed, i.e., as a member of the other sex, what we would traditionally call a transsexual. That last part was me. Other individuals affirm their unique gender identity and no longer consider themselves either male or female, and they cite Kate Bornstein, 1994, Kimberly 97, Stone 91, Warren 93. Instead, they may describe their gender identity in specific terms such as transgender, bigender, or genderqueer, affirming their unique experience that may transcend a male-female binary understanding of gender. They may not experience their process of identity affirmation as a transition because they never fully embraced the gender role they were assigned at birth, or because they actualize their gender identity, role, and expression in a way that does not involve a change from one gender role to another. For example, some youth identifying For example, some youth identifying as genderqueer have always experienced their gender identity and role as such, genderqueer. Greater public visibility and awareness of gender diversity has further expanded options for people with gender dysphoria to actualize an identity and find a gender role and expression that is comfortable for them. So basically, WPATH has come out and said, these standards of care that we had, they served the need that existed before because we didn't have standards of care for trans people. But we had this pretty narrow view of what a transgender person is and the experience that they have and the desires they have for their transition or any transition at all or their identity. And so anything that was sort of outside of those definitions ran into roadblocks over and over again. I know I've seen on other trans forums advice about what to say to the therapist so you can get your hormones letter, or what to say to your doctor so that you can get hormones, and you know, how to follow the script basically so that the standards of care, so you can navigate the standards of care. So it sounds like this revision 7, which just went into effect, really resolves a lot of that gatekeeping and barriers that we would run into. I think it's fantastic. I think it's so empowering for the individual to be able to say, I don't fit your mold. That does not mean that you get to deny me the things that I need in order to feel healthy and happy. So that's really the case now. You know, doctors and therapists are encouraged not to put up roadblocks as long as the person is making an informed choice. So as you read through the document, it discusses a little more. Like I said, after 1 a.m., actually it's 1:30, it discusses moving towards an informed consent model. So this is more where the doctor explains the risks of hormone therapy, because there are risks. There are serious risks of complication and injury that can occur. So, you know, it's treating the patient like an adult. You know, and as long as they understand the risks and know that they have proper expectations of what the hormones will and will not do, then there's no reason for the doctor to arbitrarily say that this person can't have them and this person can. The standards of care also encourage or allow your primary care physician to prescribe and maintain your hormone regimen so that you don't have to go to an endocrinologist. That's huge for quite a lot of people. I mean, the majority of physicians and therapists were following the standards of care because that's all they had to follow. They didn't, you know, they're not up on the latest gender literature. They don't always know that this is normal and expected because it's not in the standards of care, specifically as a bigender person. So I have been tremendously lucky in my treatment and transition. I was lucky enough to encounter a therapist, or to have gotten a therapist who was open to bigender as a gender identity. She had never heard of it, but you know, she didn't contest me on the term or the label. In fact, she went out and did research on her own and came back with a little more understanding. And when I came to her and asked for hormones, after seeing her off and on for about a year, I think 2010 is when I started. No, 2009 is when I started, because I just passed 2 years. So think I'd seen her for a year. No. I'd actually only been seeing her for like 3 to 6 months, something like that. Sorry, that whole time period gets a little fuzzy for me. Anyway, so when I came to her and asked to get hormones, she wrote me a letter and said that she felt it was within my proper care, and so I went to an endocrinologist who was in my plan, my insurance plan, and had one of the most miserable experiences in my entire life that I've had in a doctor's office. She asked me all kinds of unrelated, intrusive questions, like, during sex, do I take the male or female role? I don't even know what that means. And she ran blood tests, which is expected. She also ran a gene test, a karyotype test, to make sure I wasn't XXY or had anything other than an XY chromosome set. Why it's relevant, I'm not sure. And then she looked at my chest, and I never had a lot of pectoral muscles. She looked at my chest and told me that I wouldn't really get any breast development. She was not right. But I felt so horrible about the whole experience. I felt like objectified and like a lab rat, and like it was not my right to determine my own health. But she did get the blood tests, and she did send me the results. But I ended up not going back to her. In working with my therapist, she had discovered the Howard Brown Health Center. I mean, it has been there for years, servicing the trans community in Chicago. But she recommended the Howard Brown Health Center to me, and they were getting ready to implement their THINK program, which is Transgender Health Informed Consent, THINC. And I think they were piloting it because it didn't have its name yet. And I saw a press release after I had been their patient for 10 months or so, that they were introducing this new plan. But what it was I went and I spoke to the doctor, and I showed her my letter. I mean, I already had a hormones letter, so I didn't really have to go through the evaluation that they normally required, but they do require an evaluation with a therapist who's familiar with trans issues. But it's really more just to make sure that you are a rational adult and capable of making decisions on your own. That's it. And just to make sure that you're aware of, like, you know, what you can and can't expect from hormones. And then I got my prescription, and I have been on hormones for, like I said, just past 2 years. But that was the most empowering experience I'd ever had in a doctor's office, because they worked really closely with me to make sure that we were doing it safely. We ramped up through estrogen, and you know, I have been so very satisfied. I've gone back a number of times for, you know, checkups and blood tests and everything else, but I think that it was their model that helped inform the WPATH new standards of care. Now, I don't know that it was all Howard Brown, and I don't know that they're mentioned by name in here, but it's very similar to what the new standards call for. So I'm very excited about this change. I think it is so empowering for a new generation of trans kids who won't have to run through the gamut of roadblocks that our senior members have had to do, and our big brothers and sisters have had to run into over and over again just to get access to the health care that they require. So, you know, I'm curious to see what my other channel mates have to say about it. You know, like I said, I'm very excited. It doesn't have much impact on me because I'm already in the middle of transition, or in transition. So, you know, nothing changes for me. I'm still getting the same hormones. I'm still, you know, following the same procedure. But it's already following the standards of care, new standards of care model, which is the informed consent. And I'm doing all the transition I plan to do at this point in my life. Yeah, so that's all I have to say on this. I think it's really cool. So rate, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. Take a look at our individual channel members. You can find links to their channels, our channels, on the bigenderdotnet, all spelled out, channel page. So please leave us, all kinds of feedback, send us questions, and let us know what you think. Thank you very much. Have a great week.